You ever give everything to someone only for them to throw you away like you never mattered to me after 15 long years of loyalty? And is silence just a story? It's a reminder that sometimes the quiet ones know more than anyone else did for Velory Diaries, where every story comes straight from more spiritual forever. And if they haven't already subscribed for more story, it becomes more than just a job. It turns into a part of your identity, a second home where you pour every ounce of effort and hope, believing that loyalty means something. The early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices that no one ever sees, they all become silent proof of your dedication. Every project completed, every crisis handled, every quiet success builds a sense of belonging, like you've earned your place through years of trust and hard work. But that illusion can shatter in an instant with just a few words, a cold look, or a sudden decision that strips away everything you thought you were to them. One moment you're valuable, dependable, and respected. The next, you're nothing more than a name on a termination list. It's not even the loss of a job that cuts the deepest. It's the realization that all those years of loyalty meant nothing to the people who benefited from it most. The dismissal wasn't dramatic, but it didn't need to be. It was quiet, almost routine, like brushing away something unwanted. Yet behind that silence was a cruelty that hit harder than any confrontation. It's a strange feeling to stand in the same space where you once felt proud, now stripped of meaning. Every achievement that once filled the air with purpose turns into a haunting reminder of how easily it can all vanish. There's a kind of betrayal in that, a deep, personal kind that doesn't come from an enemy, but from those you trusted. The memories of all those years replay not as accomplishments, but as moments of nerve faith. The office that once felt alive became a battlefield of whispers. The air carried a heaviness that no one wanted to acknowledge. Conversations stopped when footsteps approached and eyes quickly turned away. There's a quiet cruelty in knowing that the same people who once celebrated your efforts now avoid your gaze, as if loyalty had turned into something shameful. Every desk, every hallway, every familiar sound felt different, tainted by a truth that couldn't be ignored anymore. The warmth that once existed was gone, replaced by a suffocating tension that spoke louder than words ever could. It wasn't just the betrayal from one person. It was the slow unraveling of a world built on false promises. The place that once felt like a second family revealed its true face, and in that moment, the illusion of belonging died completely. All the laughter shared over coffee breaks, the celebrations of small wins, the long nights spent working for the company's success, they now felt like scenes from a story that was never real. The reality was simple and cruel. Loyalty doesn't always protect you, and sometimes the people you trust most are the first to cut you loose. What once felt like a home became nothing more than a stage for deceit, and the silence that followed was louder than any words of goodbye. There's something unsettling about realizing that a smile no longer feels genuine. It's the same expression, the same familiar curve of the lips. But there's a shift beneath it, a chill that creeps in when the eyes don't match the warmth the words pretend to carry. Each polite greeting, every moment of small talk begins to feel rehearsed. The laughter sounds practiced, the kindness hollow. It's strange how someone can look you in the eye and still be hiding a secret behind their calm expression. What once felt like mentorship now feels like manipulation wrapped in charm. The trust that once came naturally starts to fracture, and every compliment begins to sound like a distraction from something darker happening behind closed doors. The changes were subtle at first, a few hushed conversations that stopped when footsteps approached, certain projects quietly reassigned. Meetings that used to include everyone suddenly becoming private. There's a pattern to deceit that reveals itself slowly, and once the pieces start to connect, it's impossible not to see the bigger picture, the sudden distance, the careful politeness, the lack of transparency. It all begins to form a story no one is brave enough to say out loud. That's when the realization begins to settle in. This isn't about performance or progress anymore. It's about control. It's about replacing, not rewarding. They believed their secrecy was perfect, that no one could sense the growing tension beneath the surface. But silence speaks louder than words, and sometimes observation becomes the most powerful weapon. The small details, the subtle gestures, the quick glances exchanged during meetings, they all carry meaning if you know how to look. The betrayal doesn't arrive in a single moment. It builds quietly, like a storm forming on the horizon while everyone pretends the sky is still clear. There's a certain power in knowing what others think you don't. The whispers that were never meant to reach certain ears, the hidden emails, the subtle moves, they all reveal more than intended. The facade begins to crack, and behind it lies the truth that's been there all along. The very people pretending to support are the same ones plotting the downfall. But awareness changes everything. Once the pretense is seen for what it truly is, fear fades and clarity takes its place. Watching them act as though everything is fine becomes almost surreal. They underestimate the quiet observer. Believing the silence means ignorance. What they never realize is that the game has already shifted. Every false smile, every calculated gesture, every forced display of respect is now part of a story being carefully written in silence. The awareness of betrayal doesn't destroy, it prepares. It gives time to watch, to plan, to gather the truth piece by piece. And as their deception deepens, so does the calm of the one who already knows. The moment will come when the truth unfolds, and all those practiced smiles will be replaced with the shock of realization that their secret was never really a secret at all. The late night meetings began to feel different. They used to be about problem solving, about pushing through deadlines and finding creative solutions. But lately, the tone had shifted. The conversations grew quieter, more selective, and the same familiar faces weren't always there. There was a new rhythm in the office. One built on secrecy instead of teamwork. Calls came in after hours, doors stayed closed longer, and the topics of discussion felt deliberately vague. It was as if something important was happening, something no one wanted to admit out loud. Then came the policy changes. Small at first, then more noticeable. Procedures were rewritten without warning, job roles adjusted, responsibilities shuffled around under the guise of efficiency. But nothing about it felt random. Each change seemed to move certain people forward while quietly pushing others to the edge. There's a moment when instinct starts speaking louder than reason. The small coincidences start lining up too neatly to ignore. The sudden meetings that don't include everyone, the carefully worded memos, the hesitation in people's voices when asked simple questions. All of it builds into a quiet confirmation that something deeper is taking shape. It's a strange kind of helplessness, watching the world you've built, your stability on begin to twist in ways you can't fully prove but can definitely feel. The hardest part isn't even the uncertainty. It's pretending not to notice. Dedication was once the strongest trait, the reason for being trusted and relied upon. Every late night, every extra hour spent working beyond exhaustion was done with pride. But that same commitment slowly became a weapon in someone else's hands. The more dependable the effort, the easier it was to exploit. What was once seen as passion was rebranded as obligation. The dedication that used to open doors now became the very reason to be taken for granted. There's a cruel irony in realizing that hard work can blind you. That trust can become a weakness when placed in the wrong hands. The long hours, the sacrifices, the loyalty, all of it became a shield for others to hide behind. Those in power used it to mask their motives, knowing that commitment would keep questions quiet. Every time something felt off, reassurance came in soft words and false gratitude. "We value you," they'd say, while silently plotting the next step that would move everything closer to a quiet dismissal. It wasn't negligence, it was strategy. That realization cuts deeper than any insult or betrayal. Because it's not just about losing a position, it's about losing faith in what work and loyalty was supposed to mean. The very thing that was once a source of pride turns into proof of manipulation. It's the kind of betrayal that doesn't need confrontation to hurt. It lingers in every memory of sacrifice that was never acknowledged. In every late night spent working for a dream that was never meant to include the ones who built it. Behind every compliment was a hidden motive. The kind words that once felt genuine started to sound rehearsed, each one carefully placed to keep suspicion quiet. Praise became a distraction, a way to make someone feel secure while decisions were being made behind closed doors. It's strange how easily people can disguise manipulation as appreciation. Every time those encouraging words were spoken, they came with an undertone that didn't match the surface. The smiles, the reassuring tones, the promises of recognition, they all worked like a cover for something darker taking place in the background. The realization came slowly. It's like a shadow stretching longer each day until the truth could no longer be ignored. Compliments had become currency in a game of deception, meant not to uplift but to control. Those moments that once brought pride started to feel empty. The thank yous no longer warmed the heart but left a bitter aftertaste. It wasn't about effort or value anymore. It was about maintaining silence. The more someone was flattered, the more they were expected to overlook. It was a clever tactic, one designed to make loyalty feel rewarded when in truth, it was being used as a leash. When the truth began to show itself, every well done felt like a lie spoken to keep a secret safe. It became clear that those words were never meant to honor dedication. They were meant to keep eyes from seeing too much. But the truth was already unraveling. Every subtle change, every misplaced file, every carefully worded conversation began to paint a picture no one could deny. The signs were everywhere, if one only paid attention. The tone of meetings, the sudden avoidance of certain subjects, the way information was withheld, it all spoke louder than any words ever could. And so details started being gathered piece by piece. It's not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Observation became the only form of defense left. The truth wasn't something discovered all at once. It was built slowly, like assembling a puzzle in the dark. Each quiet observation added weight to the growing certainty that everything happening wasn't accidental. There was planning involved, precision even, but arrogance too. Those who plotted believed their actions were invisible, that no one could trace the threads back to them. They underestimated how much people notice when they stop speaking and start watching. Information became power, the kind of power that didn't need to be used immediately, just kept until the right moment arrived. Every secret overheard, every document studied, every careless word spoken in presumed privacy became a piece of evidence. What they failed to realize was that control built on lies never lasts. The more they tried to hide, the clearer their intentions became. What once seemed like paranoia turned into undeniable proof. The truth wasn't just known. It was ready, waiting patiently for the perfect time to strike. And while they believed the silence meant ignorance, it was actually preparation for the reckoning they never saw coming. When the dismissal finally came, it wasn't shocking. The words were expected, almost rehearsed in the mind long before they were spoken aloud. There was no anger, no begging, no confusion, only a calm acceptance that this was the moment everything had been leading toward. They believed they were in control, that the decision was theirs to make, but the truth had already been known. Every step they took, every plan they whispered about had been quietly recorded in memory. Their actions were predictable, their timing transparent. They thought they were removing a threat, but in reality, they were walking straight into one. The feeling wasn't of loss, it was of release. The game they thought they'd won had already been played out, and their victory was nothing more than an illusion built on arrogance. The calmness of that moment was what made it powerful. There was no need for confrontation, no desperate defense. Sometimes silence can wound more deeply than words ever could. Watching them speak with confidence, unaware of what was waiting for them, carried a strange sense of satisfaction. They dismissed a person they believed was powerless, not realizing that the groundwork for their downfall had already been laid. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about balance, about revealing the truth that power built on deceit never lasts. And when it was time to walk away, it wasn't empty-handed. The letter left behind was simple, but within its words was everything they tried to bury. It wasn't a threat, nor was it anger disguised as professionalism. It was the truth written with precision and purpose. Every detail they thought was hidden was laid bare in that message. It exposed the quiet manipulation, the misuse of trust, the choices made to protect ego instead of integrity. It was the kind of letter that didn't need to shout. Its calm tone was enough to shake the walls they built on lies. What made it more devastating was that it didn't accuse, it revealed. It held up a mirror to their actions, forcing them to see themselves without the comfort of denial. It was written with a stillness that only truth can carry, the kind that doesn't demand validation. It wasn't crafted out of vengeance, but out of clarity. The kind that comes when someone has been silent long enough to understand every angle of betrayal. When they finally read it, the shock was inevitable. The people who thought they controlled the story suddenly realized they were characters in someone else's plan. The quiet exit became an explosion of consequences that rippled through every corner of their carefully constructed world. That single letter became the storm that tore through their false sense of control, leaving them exposed and scrambling for explanations. It wasn't revenge, it was revelation. A reminder that truth, no matter how long it's hidden, always finds its way to the surface, often in the most unexpected and devastating ways. Silence became the sharpest weapon of all. It wasn't the kind that came from fear or defeat, but from strategy and strength. After the letter was left behind, the real unraveling began. Whispers filled the office, spreading faster than anyone could control. The calmness that had once been mistaken for weakness now became something haunting. Every unanswered question, every quiet glance began to carry weight. The ones who thought they had ended everything were suddenly the ones living in uncertainty. Meetings grew tense, conversations shorter, and trust within their circle started to break apart piece by piece. No accusations needed to be made. The silence spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. The truth has a way of echoing, even when no one dares to speak it aloud. Their downfall didn't come from a dramatic confrontation or public exposure. It came from the slow collapse of the lies they built. People started connecting dots on their own. Documents once overlooked were now examined. Decisions once accepted were questioned. And suddenly their leadership didn't seem so untouchable anymore. The fear they once used to control others turned inward. The confidence in their voices began to crack, and the office that once revolved around their authority now revolved around their mistakes. The quiet justice that unfolded was almost poetic. Every secret they buried began to surface. Every manipulation came back to haunt them. The power of silence is that it leaves space for reflection. It forces others to sit with their guilt and question their choices. There was no need for revenge because the truth itself did the work. Every rumor, every discovery, every whisper of doubt became part of their undoing. What they once dismissed as harmless loyalty became the very thing that exposed them. Their empire of control crumbled not because of rage or revenge, but because of truth delivered with precision and patience. The same stillness they underestimated became the force that destroyed everything they tried to protect. In the end, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about reclaiming peace. There's a kind of justice that doesn't need destruction, only revelation. Watching everything unfold from a distance brought a sense of closure that no confrontation ever could. Those who betrayed finally had to face the mirror they'd been avoiding. The lies they told, the harm they caused, the manipulation they justified, it all came back to them in ways they never expected. The final outcome wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, inevitable, and deeply satisfying. Justice didn't roar, it whispered. The people who once stood tall on deception now stood in the shadow of their own actions. And through it all, the silence remained steady, powerful, unbroken. It was the final proof that sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't fueled by anger at all. It's the calm, deliberate truth that exposes everything and leaves those who wronged you with nothing but the echo of their own guilt. In the end, this story wasn't about betrayal or revenge. It was about awakening. It showed how loyalty can be twisted, how trust can be weaponized, and how silence can become the strongest form of resistance. After 15 years of dedication, the truth revealed something far greater than the loss of a job. It exposed the fragile foundation of deceit built by those who thought power made them untouchable. Every quiet moment, every careful observation, every act of restraint led to a reckoning that spoke louder than confrontation ever could. The downfall of those who betrayed didn't come from rage, but from their own choices reflected back at them. It proved that justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives in calmness, wrapped in truth, and delivered without warning. What was meant to destroy ended up becoming liberation, a clean break from manipulation and false promises. This wasn't just a story of loss. It was a story of rebirth. Walking away wasn't defeat. It was freedom. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness. It was strength. It was a reminder that no betrayal, no dismissal, no deception can erase the power of self-worth. Because in the quiet aftermath of destruction, truth always stands tall, and those who once tried to bury it are the first to be buried by it. And that is the message this story leaves behind. Never underestimate the quiet ones, for they see more, endure more, and rise higher than anyone ever expects.